So now we are getting at it, one game all. Both guys 6-1, looking to win to get into top 8. And I thought we'd really just have a little bit of a chat here. I mean, we've been following 4 people through this tournament, and from talking with them all, Matt Light seems to have put the most effort in out of the 4, and he's already in the top 8. Rob Wagner also put a considerable amount of effort in, not as much as Matt. Rob had already decided his deck some time before this tournament. And then we have our other 2 guys who sort of went 3-2. Didn't really put that much effort as maybe they could have. You know, they sort of both decided to play a deck they were comfortable with, or indeed were given. There's one of them there, sticking his head right in front of the camera.
Thanks, Jack.
But he's small, you wouldn't think he'd have such a fat head on camera. So it's important, really, for people to realise that I think there definitely is some obvious correlation between making an actual effort and progressing through the tournament.
I mean, there is a bit, but the fact is, I mean, Jack would have put work in throughout the week for sure on his deck, because I know Jack fairly well. He nice draw from Flavio there. He gets his 1-drop taken, but ends up with another one. So Jack will definitely have put effort into what deck he wants to take, but he admitted himself that he punted one game in this tournament to not being familiar with his deck. And as we've spoken with a couple of the guys, they've said, you know, you get 1 life at a PTQ, and Jack burned his life very early by essentially punting a game. Matt has been smooth as silk with his deck. First 6 rounds didn't drop a game. He knows what he's playing, and he knows how to play it really well. And that's
right, but these are the very 2 distinct differences. Like, a lot of people will know their deck, they won't know necessarily their opponent's decks, or the interactions between their deck and all of their opponent's decks that they're going to come up against.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about being familiar with your deck, it's about being familiar with the format as well.
One thing we did talk about in one of the interviews was how as soon as you see that second land, you should pretty much know 90% of the guy's deck.
Yeah, I mean, the moment you see, in this game for example, even if Rob hadn't have seen Flavio's hand, the moment that Flavio goes land Bird of Paradise, that can only be like 1 deck really in this format, and that deck's Kiki-Pod. It's like the only other decks which use Birds of Paradise are very sort of fringe decks.
Probably decks that are playing like Geist of St. Traft or something like that.
Yeah, those sort of haunted zoo decks that we saw at Liverpool have kind of fallen out of favour due to the fact they've lost Bloodbraid Elf. As we saw from Ian Piraway, he went to the more sort of really hyper aggro style zoo build rather than a haunted zoo build. It's really, whereas Jund has kind of replaced the Bloodbraid Elf with either Huntmaster of the Fells or with Falconwrath Aristocrat or something along those lines. Those cards don't really fit into the Haunted Zoo game plan, so that deck kind of had a bit of a drop off in this tournament, at least, because I'm just not sure that many people knew what to replace the Bloodbraid Elf with.
There were certainly quite a few discussions going about with Rob. He was a little unsure himself, even hours before the start of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Rob's usually someone who's got a very, very good sort of finger on the pulse of how the metagame's going to look. Both himself and Matt Light play an awful lot on Magic Online, so you would expect if there are going to be 2 people who are up on the metagame, it's going to be Matt and Rob.
Inquisition there?
That's Thoughtseize for
the other one.
Yep.
They all look the same when they're black and casting cost of 1.
Yep. And you know, Flavio's come back quite well from it to have Kitchen Finks and Noble Hierarch as cards have come off the top of his deck, because when Rob and another Kitchen Finks in hand, wow, because when Rob Inquisitioned him on turn 1, he left him with just Court of Calling and Murderous Redcap in hand, so Flavio's drawn pretty well to get out of it at this stage. But I think that Rob is still probably a little bit
I mean, there's
favoured.
a bunch of decks where if they always get what they want, there's nothing you can do about it. You can just win, and the Pod's one of those decks.
Yeah, if
the best Pod draws are just devastating. They're so fast.
I mean, if you
just can't disrupt them.
Yeah, exactly. If the Pod deck gets like turn 2 Pod off a mana dork, it's almost never going to lose. Unless you deal with the Pod right there and then, it's just not going to lose the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, like even, and that's one of the problems, certainly all the way, all through the PTQ season, all these white-blue decks that seem just to have this bizarre popularity in the UK had against Pod, was that the white-blue players would very often go, yeah, you know, I'm in control, but they'd always sort of just make some spell during their own turn and let the Pod player just sneak that Pod into play, and from that moment onwards it's like you have to counter every single one of my creatures.
Yeah, and again that comes down to familiarity with the matchup. It's a case of respecting what the Pod deck can do. You know, if a Pod deck has, and knowing the iterations, because if a Pod has a 3 and a 4 in play and a birthing Pod, it can kill you. You know, if it has
with a 2 and a 4.
Yeah, 2 and a 4, 2 and a 3.
You can do it with a 1 and a 3.
Yeah.
In fact, because it can turn the 1 into a phantasmal image, copy the 3.
Yep.
Turn the 3 into an angel, blink the phantasmal image.
Well, you can't blink the phantasmal image.
Yeah. But yeah, turn the phantasmal image
into a Deceiver Exarch, untap the Pod again, Pod the it's.
You know, and that's the thing about Kiki-Pod, is that, you know, you can't just be given the deck.
No, you absolutely can't.
There's so many kills you can just find with it from all over the place.
Yeah, I believe there was an article written on Star City a while back, and it literally was just pages of how you kill your opponent from a board position of having a 2 and a 4 or a 2 and a 3, and what like the optimal Pods were, and you just saw this just huge list of kills immediately.
And the cool thing about it though was that it's pretty resistant to removal as well. So, you know, you at that point when you start to try and go off and they just go, you know, I'll kill that, it's like, fine, I'll just go off next turn. It's no problem at all.
I mean, obviously the one weak link of it trying to go off is Kiki-Jiki just being a 2/2, but the problem that you have is that if you have a Restoration Angel in play, you have to time it so well.
It's also an issue that you can't just give Pod the number of turns it needs. You have to put pressure on, and inevitably that means tapping your land for mana.
Yeah.
At which point you open up the opportunity for Pod to go off and you not to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. You want to be aggressive, but at the same time, as soon as that Pod comes out, you know you can't really overcommit if you have some kind of answer to his combo.
Yeah, which is why it's often the best course of action against Pod is to either use a card like Stony Silence to shut down the Pod completely, or to use counter magic on the Pod, obviously, because there's no once the Pod's in play, it's incredibly difficult to beat a Kiki-Pod deck.
I mean, sometimes even when Pod doesn't draw its Pod, it can get a draw where it just turns into value deck.
Yeah, it turns into value deck, or it can just naturally draw one of its infinite combos. You know, it can naturally just go into Kiki-Jiki Deceiver Exarch or Kiki-Jiki Restoration Angel.
I mean, Murderous Redcap, you know, with a couple of Restoration Angels following up, that's ridiculous.
Yep, and as we can see here, Flavio now has Birthing Pod down. Again, Rob's not done a massive amount this matchup, really. He's
made stuff, but the stuff's just been trying to keep Flavio under check.
And also, Flavio's used Fulminator Mage and Avalanche Riders to really pin Rob's
Again,
mana here.
That's just another one of those draws that this deck does. You know, if you sideboard in your one Avalanche Ride, if you make it turn 3, follow it up with the Restoration Angel, you can just screw people out of games. You know, this deck's perfectly capable of just beating up with a couple of 2/2 schmoes.
Yeah. I mean, if Flavio does have access to Phantasmal Image, and you'd think he does, It'd be like he could Restoration Angel the Avalanche Riders with the Echo on the stack, and then he can lay a land and pod his Noble Hierarch into a Phantasmal Image and just put Rob on one land. Nice move from Rob there with the Maelstrom Pulse. He's making sure Flavio can't actually pay the upkeep on that Avalanche Rider. So you get Surprise Simian Spirit Guide, and he pays the mana for it. Again, I think that's with Rob seeing how sort of mana light Flavio is, he's trying to take a little bit of advantage there. Apparently not. You know, he was thinking of trying to take advantage there, because otherwise I'd have expected that Maelstrom Pulse to get thrown at the birthing pod, but
I think it pretty much still actually had to get thrown at the birthing pod.
well, I mean,
Rob's at 7, which is really unfortunate for him, but you know, the pod just guarantees a victory for Flavio.
I mean, the problem is that if Rob does Maelstrom Pulse the pod and Flavio does have Restoration Angel, that's just game right there. Rob can't recover from that.
If he doesn't.
Whereas Rob does get a kind of 2-for-1 with the he does get a 2-for-1 with the Maelstrom Pulse, because he takes out the Avalanche Rider and the Noble Hierarch. And if Flavio doesn't have a 4th land, then the only thing Flavio can do is pod his Staticaster into a 4-drop, which isn't going to kill Rob. And if Rob's sitting on like another removal spell, he might be able to recover from that point. So maybe he's just giving him...
We don't know whether Flavio's sideboarded in any good 5-drops at all, whether Thragtusk is in there somewhere.
Could be Thragtusk, could be Baneslayer Angel or something like that. And yeah, we've just got value deck coming out here, because he's just blinked his Kitchen Finks using Restoration Angel, so he's just got pretty much infinite activations of that birthing pod now. And I will be incredibly surprised if Rob can recover from this position. Tarmogoyf ain't going to do it, I'm afraid.
And really, you know, it's important to note that a lot of games in Modern, they just aren't fair.
And it certainly wouldn't feel that way from Rob's side, because Flavio just had nothing on turn one when Rob thought seized him.
Really, that Rob could have made to change the outcome here.
Yeah, I mean, when Rob Inquisition Flavio turn 1 and got rid of his mana dork, the fact that Flavio's recovered as well as he has is, he could have just drawn a load of useless creatures here, but he's drawn sort of double Kitchen Finks birthing pod, having been.
Well, the pod's the one, that's what it always comes back to.
Now at this point.
At this point, you're just trying to set up a situation where you've won next turn, really, from Flavio.
Yeah.
You're seeing whether the kill's there this turn.
I don't believe it. I mean, if he's got Phyrexian Metamorph...
Rob's just checking to see which parts of the combo have already gone away.
I don't think Flavio's even looking to combo here. He can just fill the board with Restoration Angels, and that'll be more than enough.
Would have killed him with a Murderous Red Cap, if he had.
Well, he's unfortunately the Murderous Red Cap's currently in the graveyard, so we'll see what madness Flavio can turn over, because this deck can do some pretty unfair things when it wants to. Of course, one of the options, he could pod for a Huntmaster, attack, pass the turn and flip the Huntmaster. Well, he's activating the pod, alright. Kitchen Finks goes away and comes back. He's doing work, that Kitchen Finks, this game. And we'll see what Flavio comes up with. Any 4-drop, it's going to be. It is Huntmaster of the Fells, so 2 more life. Flavio's life pad going up and down pretty drastically in this game.
always nice to win a game and still be on pretty much 20 life.
Yep. And in with the Restoration Angel. Yeah, I don't think that Flavio needs to do anything else apart from what he's doing here.
Has to be an amazing draw from Rob, being able to deal with 3 creatures and a birthing pod all in one turn.
I mean, Fire Spout would kill everything that isn't the Restoration Angel. Well, it wouldn't now because Huntmaster of the Fells is going to flip. So I think Rob's got a, I think what we call an all answers hand. He's got nothing. He's got nothing to establish board presence. And probably
once you give Kiki-Pod as many turns as it needs to win, you know, there's only ever going to be one winner in spots like that.
Yeah, I think so. And Rob's just passing the turn on 2 life. Can't feel too good at that point. And even John Charm doesn't do it here. And yeah, Flavio's just going to turn 3 creatures sideways. I don't even think Rob can survive this turn. Especially with only 1 source of red, I don't think he can get rid of both creatures. He can cast Abrupt Decay and Terminate and block the wolf. That's one thing he can do if he's got those cards. Well, he's got Terminate for the Restoration Angel. Does he have anything to deal with that wolf? Restoration Angel obviously the best target for the Terminate, because that's the one card another angel can't save.
Sure, if he had an answer he would have used it by now.
Yeah. And Flavio Path to Exiles the Tarmogoyf. And yeah, the wolf's going to get through.
Rob scoops it up, so valiant effort, just barely missing out on top 8s, and we'll have a chat to him if we get a chance. Otherwise, let's crack on and have a look at our top 8s.